I would like to make a very bold statement about the Bible, something that I have found in there, a way that they are encoding. You know what? There's a human life template that is actually in place. And I see this in the background in the Bible. All of Abrahamic material continually repeats on this template. All of the stories that are there are carrying, they're stories built on a template. They're all conceptual stories. Now, what I've been finding is that template begins in Genesis, but also throughout Genesis, they are beginning to do some things that become obvious once you start looking at them. They're not at first, but once you start looking at them, you see them to become obvious. And this is how they're creating a bunch of terms, an entire pool of terms. Imagine you're in a place on a template. Here's a part in your life where you are happy-go-lucky. You have not experienced life yet. This is the most wonderful time in your life that you ever had. This point in time right here, we would like to refer to this point frequently, but we don't want people to know we're referring to it. We're trying to create something else that is doing another job at the same time. But we are going to stay fixed right on this template. For anybody that finds it, we're going to dial it in. Also, remember the Bible, the stories were word of mouth. We didn't have it all collected. And there were no chapters and verses. You just heard a story, Genesis, in the beginning, and it flowed to the end of Genesis. There were no breaks or anything like that in it. So we're looking at it a little bit differently. Now, what I would like to put on the table here is my belief that there is one reality to how humans exist and how we function and how things work. And we all have shared experiences. How do we figure out what is the core of that? And that's what Just One Truth is about. There's something core in the middle of all of this. Humans need to turn inward to find that core. Some teachings on the planet are very plain language that way. Some have packages that are very powerful packages that have the practitioners relinquish and carry this package very stoutly. At the same time, that inward turning template is right there. And that is what Abrahamic traditions, as well as other myth and religions from antiquity, I could show you if I have enough time, if you take the time to watch. They're all built on the same template. There is just one truth. That is the template we're going after. Interested in that? The Bible's tricky. Yeah, but we can pick it apart. See patterns in there? Let's go look at them. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the channel. Let's get started. I think before just jumping into this, I think it's very helpful for us to establish a mindset as we're looking through this. We're looking to understand something. Pretend like you're hearing this story thousands of years ago and you don't know how to read or write. You don't have books. You're hearing this story. Yet there's something in there for you. There's clues in here. How do we figure it out? So there's like these little verbal trip-ups that, as I'm reading them, they're not verbal. They're a flow chop or something like that. I don't know what to call it. This is what it looks like right here. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. That just sounds like this repetitive gobbledygook. But you know what? It's meant to be. It's 7 day, which denotes a certain something. That place I was telling you about, that happy place, that's going to be naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden on this template, in this material. That's each of us, conscious, our inner self. We have not yet experienced life. We're happy kids. We are not covered with anything. We're naked in a happy place. The partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents the idea that we ourselves are now beginning to experience life and beginning to judge it and become products of those memories. Okay, as this right here is happening, if you know my material, and I'll just link, I need to move on from here. Right here we have 7 being said, but it's also being said 3 times. Right here is the core that I can find in current Abrahamic material with that numbering system. Right there is where it starts. In the first creation story on day 7, where it's said 3 times. 7 and 3 and naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden are all 3 the same mental location. But from there, they're going to continue to build it. Now, watch this one. Okay, so for me, this grows as you continue to move along. As I begin to understand one thing, I begin to understand the next. So as I begin to read something down here as the flood is starting, Noah is being told by God, for in 7 days, and I think to myself, oh, 7, I know what that means right off the bat. That doesn't mean 7 days. 7 means something else. Once they've established that 7 up front and that 3, it's always going to mean that all through the Abrahamic material. 7 is always going to refer back to that place. 3 is always going to refer back to that place. They have just established what 7 means, what it really means, as they're telling the story. It's part of the code. We have to collect these as we go. For in 7 days, a pure place, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. Oh, wow, we just put 40 into there. We're looking for the numbers, not the days or the nights or years or things like that at this point. We're just looking for the number itself. And we're going to see 40 and 7 and 3 become the most repetitive numbers in the Bible. Think about that real quickly. 40 days, 40 nights to flood the earth, to wipe it all out. 40 years in the desert for the Israelites, eating only manna to leave the past behind. 40 days in the desert for Jesus to move along. Somebody, I don't recall, but we're going to run into it in Genesis. Someone is 40 years old when they marry. And that also so we're getting 40 then consistently as we find it elsewhere and go, yeah, it always fits as that pure space as well. So 3, 7, 40. Now, what do? Keep moving along. 7 and 3 are first. They are so common because it continually refers back to that point. Okay, and then as I move down a little bit farther, the calling is done, and he says, and after 7 days. So he tells them to do it, and then afterwards it's like, for in 7 days I will, and then I did. So, yeah, there's I don't know, it's almost like a cause and effect in the background there as well. It's like saying, I will do it. So he collected all these things, and then I did do it. And after 7 days, the waters of the flood came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, so 600 right there becomes an analog for the time that till it's time to turn inward. Of Noah's life. I'm the one whoever is on the journey, turning inward, is Noah. And on the day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, so everything floods out. Your entire world is wiped out, and rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. So in that process right there, they took 7 and took 40 days and 40 nights, and we're going to see that happen commonly as well. I'm not going to trace that down. I already have. What we're looking for are mental jogs. This is how we spot them. They sound cumbersome. They should. But sometimes they spread out and they get a little bit more obscure to see. You have to take time and you have to process it. Okay, let's take a look at another one. I've made these examples before. So we get down here where we see after the flood, God makes his covenant with Noah. And what we see is that covenant, if you read through here, if you just read it and don't pay attention, to me, I read it and go, why did they repeat something so much? There's something in here that just sounds like it flowed and went from one place to another place to another place. And then right here, it's like it's doing a little, I don't know, like a little whirlpool. So covenant is said 7 times right here, which means what? Covenant just became 7. Then we would do the same thing by looking at, as we get down to Sodom and Gomorrah, and I apologize, I've got it marked up with other things going on right here. But it does the same thing with righteous. It's what if there's 50 righteous? What about 40 righteous? What about, and you're like, well, that's just weird. It keeps asking the same thing. But what they're doing right here is creating analogs. Righteous is said 7 times, and the number that is with it is also being created as an analog at that time. So 50 becomes an analog. Righteous becomes an analog. 5 becomes an analog, 40 becomes an analog, 30, 20, 10. All of them are there being created as analogous terms that can be used later as we move along, but they always have some kind of a weird sound to them. Something leads to another. Something's repetitive over and over again. These are mental clues as we're telling the story verbally. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Hey, that part just repeated right there. What was that? That's what we're looking. That's what we don't have going on because we don't have them memorized. All right, so as I'm exploring, and I'm still figuring this out, I'll be honest with you. You just watch me. I'm poking and prodding at this stuff in a Word document program. And what I've done right here is just pulled up Job real quick because it's easy to see that one. What I want to do when I pull up one, the first thing I want to do is check for my 3s and 7s. There we have it. And right in the beginning, I have 3 3s. I got 3 daughters, 3 sisters, 3,000 camels. So there's 3 3s right up front. 3 daughters is going to signify the pure self. That is like Eve before first sin. 3 is that pure point. Daughter is the inner being. And what else do we have if we have 7? Well, there's 7 sons. So we have 7 pure son, male, conscious. So we have, this is our childhood self. And then there's some other things going on. But we see the 7s and the 3s right up front. So I always look for that, and it is very common to find them there. I say common because sometimes they get obscured. Okay, and what I did is I downloaded Leviticus, and I wanted to just kind of play around with, actually I want to get the whole, all of Moses' work here to begin with. And I give it its initial look right here. I look for 7. Oh, it appears 66 times. Wow. Okay. However, it's way into it. It's not right up front. It's a lot farther in than I normally see it. Typically, it's going to be establishing it up front. So it is in use, but they haven't established anything new in here with respect to 7. Let's try 3. Well, there's 5 results. 33 days, 33. Boy, that is even deeper into it. Purification of woman after childbirth, way, way down there. So something isn't quite right. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't seem right. So instead I start reading it. See what I have here. And what I see as I go through this without reading the whole thing is that I see something that is not familiar to me in this way. From the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any of you bring an offering of livestock to the Lord, you shall bring your offering from the herd or from the flock." And I'm looking at this going, okay, I'm Moses, to speak to me from the tent of meeting. If it's the Lord, this is my inner being, this is my inner self. Tent of meeting must be me. Let me think about that. And then I read on. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you shall offer a male without blemish. You're like, okay, male without blemish. That means that some sort of, that a blemish is pure. You shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting. Hey, there it is again. That's me. For acceptance on your behalf before the Lord. And then down below it says it again. But I thought, what is that tent of meeting? And this is the kind of stuff where you look at it and this is where it just becomes, honestly, it's personal. Does it get your attention? It never has before. Now that I'm looking for this and looking at things and I'm keyed to it, I look at that and go, what is that? So I go back and take a look and say, let me just gander here. Look it up. Tent of meeting. How many times does it come up? Tent of meeting. Okay, I get 43 results. Right in the beginning, there's 3. Tent of meeting. Tent of meeting was said 3 times right in the beginning. It established it. So the 3 is here. However, instead of it saying 3 or repeating something, what it's doing is saying tent of meeting 3 times, which then establishes tent of meeting as that pure state, which is 3, correct? How about 40? There are 43 of these. So the 3 up here establish it. Then as you get into the actual story, all of them reference back to that same place. They have established the analog here. They didn't have to carry it from previously. Or perhaps they did. But in this case, think of this Leviticus coming to you as a standalone verbal story. Some shepherd comes along, hey, little kid, I got a new story for you. This one's called Leviticus. Oh, yes, tell me about it. Then you sit down and you get your buddies and they start and telling you about it. And it doesn't say all this stuff up front. It doesn't say the burnt offering or anything like that. It just starts, the Lord summoned Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meetings, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any of you bring an offering of livestock to the Lord, you shall bring your offering from the herd or from the flock. And, I don't know. I'm just kind of hamming that up a little bit there. But, okay, so you see how it continues on, and it appears to be consistent. And in this case, not only did they say it 3 times in the beginning, which says, okay, 10th of meeting becomes this analog up here. Now we're going to use it 40 times, which doubles up. Now, guess what? It's not only 3, it's also 40. We've solidified it right here. We've established it, and then we used it exactly this amount of times. I see that structure in there, but you have to dig at it. Do you see that? I wouldn't know that unless I had it memorized. Think of your own hobbies, what you do. I need 7400 series low-power Schottky chips for that tactical application. Somebody else might be like, no, I need 12 header bolts. They're 3/16 by, such and such. And somebody else, what is your hobby? What do you do? What do you know that you didn't at one time? And you can look back now and go, yeah, if I knew this story memorized, I could pick that out of it. They were doing that. We don't give them that credit. I don't have that capacity. I just see something is there. So you see how I'm finding it. I'm using a search function as my memory because I don't have it memorized. But you have to look at things and go, well, that gets my attention somehow. It sounds weird. What is that doing? There's little things in here you have to look at and process them and go, boy, there's something with numbers they're doing and repeating things. That's what we're observing. But you can see, so far, it continues to maintain consistency. I've not found yet where it doesn't work. I've got a lot to download. There's a lot there. I'm not saying it is 100%. This is everywhere there's going to be this kind of a structure. Sometimes they're just telling you, love the Lord and everything will be okay. It's not always about turning in and healing yourself. Sometimes it's about just being in the moment. But, okay, for some reason, the screen doesn't show up here. What I've done right here is I've got up into the replace function, and it has a window up right now, actually, that I can see on mine. It's just not recording it. And I put the tent there, and I replaced that with pure self. So if you, and did that in every location. So if you were to read it now, it would be the Lord summoned Moses and spoke to him from the pure self, saying, speak to the Israelites. Move down to the next one. Dashing the blood against all sides of the altar that is at the entrance of the pure self. So this is some sort of an atonement you're doing with yourself. Let me actually go search for pure self now so I can find it. Pure self. There we go. 43 occurrences. 3 up front. I'm going to jump down here. Let's just grab one. You shall lay your hand on the head of the offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the pure self. So this is, what are you offering? What are we're offering up what it is we've got hidden away to the pure self. It shall be slaughtered before the pure self. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so you see what I'm doing there. That's just grabbing at it very quickly here. It's not a very well thought out process at this point. Just looking at that going, you know what? We can actually change those and start looking at what the story is, decoding the story, changing the numbers to what they are, and then just seeing if it all fits. That would be pretty solid confirmation, I think. Anyway, fun stuff, huh? So you see how it's happening. And you see that when I do it, it has to be this kind of a process. There's a point where I'm going through and I'm reading things and I'm looking for stuff, and I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for commonalities. I'm looking for what is the same and how they're doing things. And when you find patterns, you look at them and go, okay, why are they doing that? Go read the story and try to figure out what's happening on the template. So it's a process like that. But you can see at some point, we get hooked into it enough, you go, okay, I see that numbering template system they have going on. I thought of a short analogy I was talking to Van about, and it would be something like this. This is so simple that it's oversimplified from the Bible, but think about this and understand that this is kind of what they're doing. That I want to give a message to Van to meet me on 3rd Street, but the only way to get him the message is for a runner. It's got to get carried word of mouth. And I don't want anybody else to know where I am. So what I do is I send out the message saying, here, tell Van that I need to meet him on 9th Street. I'll see him when he gets to 9th Street. I'll wait there. until he arrives on 9th Street. And everybody who hears that message is going to be like waiting for us on 9th Street. Meanwhile, Van knows, oh, he said it 3 times, I'll meet him on 3rd. Okay, so that's a little oversimplified, but that's the kind of coding processes they have. That's too simple of a step. They're going a little more complicated than that, but build from that. That's what they're doing. I know what the template is, so I can see the numbers and how they go on there. I had to know the template before I could see the numbers, honestly. Yeah, absolutely. I had to know what they were doing before I realized how they were doing it. I knew that they were doing it, but I didn't know how. And as we keep digging into it, you see, okay, that's what they're doing. They're remembering it's mental, it's verbal. It has to be included in the story. It has to be deliverable with the story. So you're hearing things, looking for stuff that sounds a certain way when you read it. I think analogies work very well. The instructions are in the package. Think of it in these terms. Have you ever been in a class where a teacher wanted you to pass, and as they're preparing you for the test, they're making some kind of a signal letting you know this question is going to be on the test? And you go, uh-oh, this is important. Then you might not pay attention, but then you get the signal, uh-oh, this is important. Okay, this isn't exactly the same because it's all important, but there's little encoded verbal things in here that should make you go, uh-oh, what is that? Something's going on. But you have to kind of understand that there is something there. But so it really is a personal capacity to hear a story and go, that sounded weird. There's something there. And some of it might be just very repetitive, common techniques, and other techniques might be subtle, like that 7 in 7, I'll give you 40. 7 will become 40 at some point, is not the same as saying 7 3 times. They're different styles, but you can see, okay, I can see that there's some sort of a verbal process they're doing to kind of point. They're using pointers. And yeah, that's what we're looking for. It's an analysis process. Anyway, hope this was fun. I wanted to get this video out because it's like, oh yeah, this one is so solid. You can see it, can't you? Absolutely. All right. Take care. See you in the next video.